Hello everyone, my name is Sister Megs. So glad to be coming into your space today. All right, so welcome to my YouTube channel. And I've got a series that I felt like I would just want to share with every one of you. So this series is titled Getting Real with Sister Megs. The reason of being real is for people to truly realize who I am and what it is all about being me. So I'm trusting that we are going to have a good journey on this series. All right. So today I just wanted to take you back to how I grew up and how I find myself where I am right now. So growing up, I grew up in Zimbabwe, a town called Chegutu, and I'm the second daughter of my parents. We are 6 girls. So my parents brought us all together in such a loving and real home. I remember growing up whereby life was just life in terms of it's exactly what you get is what you are seeing in that current in that environment. So growing up, my parents, because we were 6, it was very tough, especially for my dad, because he was the only one who was working. So it was very tough for my dad to be able to look after us, all of us 6 girls. So what my mom started to do was she started to have a business, you know, what we call hustling right now, or a side business. So in this business, it was buying and selling. Would buy vegetables at the market, you know, all kind of vegetables, and we'll actually sell them in the street. So the way we used to sell them is that you put them in a big dish and put them on top of your head. And you'll be going street by street shouting out that you are selling potatoes, you are selling tomatoes, onion, and all those things. That was my life. So you would go to school in the morning, come back around 2 or 3, you start to go into the street to sell these vegetables. It was such a tough life, but it taught me some things that I'll share with you later on. So from that money that would go into the street to sell, you will come back home with that money, and that's where we had to find money to buy food. So imagine you are coming from school, you are hungry, like you are totally hungry. You get home, there is no food because you have to go and sell to be able to get food. That was tough, but we persevered still. I remember even as I was growing up, you know, being in a family of 6, where you can actually see that your parents are totally struggling. Even getting clothes was a luxury for us, like myself getting a new dress or a new skirt or even a pair of shoes. It was a luxury for us. So what would always happen many times is that either you get cut-offs from relatives, from people, or you would go and buy second-hand clothing. And I promise you, that was the best thing ever in my life, to be able to get a second-hand clothing, wash it and put it on. I mean, you would see me walking down the street feeling so good that I'm wearing such a kind of a dressing. When I look at shoes was, oh my goodness, it was such a struggle, eh? I remember, you know, slippers, the ones that you use for bathing, those were my best shoes many times. So this kind of shoes or slippers is what I would use even to go to church, wherever that I was going. You know, that slippers would get worn out. You know, by the time you start to step right into the ground from a slippers. And the other thing that I would use when it starts to turn as well was a wire to be able to bring back these slippers together. Imagine you are walking around with a slippers that has got wires all around, but you are still carrying your smile. But I remember in those days, I would say to myself, Megs, you are going to be somebody. I did not know how or what it was going to be, but I was just positive that, you know what, life was going to turn out better. So we continued living life like that. And there were seasons when at our school, we would have days where they are called civics days, where you wear home clothes to school. Those were such a hassle and a pain for me. I remember whenever it was announced that we are wearing home clothes, it would bring so much of pain, because I did not have so much of nice clothes. So I'll end up even probably just asking someone else, a neighbor, may I just borrow your clothes to be able to look presentable in front of other kids? That's what I'll end up doing. I remember this particular instant. I think I was now in a high school. So I went to one of my aunt and I asked her for some clothing. But she was tall. So she gave me a skirt. It was just so long. And you know what I did? We had to fold it. So I forget that I'm wearing borrowed clothes that are so long for me. And I'm at school, I'm now all over, looking smart. And someone notices that this skirt was folded over, and I was even wearing a shoe. I remember it was a size 7, so big. So we had put papers inside, and now people could tell, and people are starting laughing at me. That was the life that I led. And I felt so much pain, and I'm saying into myself, Megs, how is life gonna be for you? And I'm still positive, still to say, what, it's gonna get better. But how, I did not know. And at one instant, my mom did not also have shoes, because remember, these people are struggling for you, for us, the children. I remember one day she's walking in the street with no shoes, and as a nail went inside of your foot. It went deep. I remember my mom crying in so much pain. That was heartbreaking to see your parent going through such, when I think of it, sometimes it really brings so much of sadness. But I still thank God for those years. Why? Because God was doing something in my life. Then I couldn't tell what it was. So anyway, we are living that life. Then there was a season where I no longer had pants, me and my sisters, and my mom couldn't afford to buy us pants. So she takes one of your petticoats, I remember vividly in the color, it was orange. And then she takes it to the tailor and says, you know what, my daughters no longer have pants. Please, can you make pants out of this petticoat? They were so big, they would start from here, such that when you are sitting, people could easily tell what kind of a pant you are wearing, especially when your dress goes up a little bit. And I remember in my class, there was a lady there. And so she sees it, then she's now showing me. She was wearing a white pant with some red flowers. She goes like, look at my pants. And in my mind, I'm just like, will I ever be able to wear such a pant? But anyway, that was life. So that was life we continued to live, going into the street, selling vegetables, coming back home, then we would have to have food, dressing that is what it was all about. But we were living life. One thing that we were never short of was the love of my parents, from my dad and from my mom. They were there through it all. I remember that my mother would stand up so strong in wanting to make sure that there was food on the table. At one point, my dad had this one pair of shoes. Remember, it was even brown that he had. So it was only one, and he wore it until it was torn. So you could take it to the cobbler to put another heel, until the cobbler was just like, Baba, can't you just get a new pair? And he couldn't, because he could not afford it. We were so many, and they were trying to make ends meet in our lives. But remember what I said. I still had this thing in my heart to say, life was going to be better. So what I developed in those years was, I would speak to myself. And I continually do so. I would speak to myself. I would say to myself, Megs, you are going to be better. Megs, you are a success story. Megs, you are a force to be reckoned with. Megs, it's gonna get better. Cheer up. In that kind of life, I continued. So now, one of the things that I started to realize as I'm growing, or even when I started to work now, when I was now in the workplace, I started to buy shoes out of a poverty mentality. When you buy things to compensate your childhood, that's what I started to do. So I would buy so many shoes, some of them that I couldn't even walk in, just for me to be able to count them, to say, now I've got 100 pairs of shoes, so I've made it. Buying out of poverty, not realizing that, no, Megs, you can actually now afford shoes. Relax, you can even buy 5. You are fine with those 5 pairs of shoes. But I was doing it out of a poverty mentality. So that was it. But then I've just run ahead of my story. So as I'm going to school, this is one of the things that I also loved or enjoyed. I loved reading. So I would read a lot, study hard, because remember what I'm continually telling myself, that I'm going to be somebody. So I would read and study so hard, and I passed my high school. But my parents could not afford to take me to university then. There was no money. So it meant that I had to go into the workforce. So I went in and started to work as a clerk at one of the companies. I am promising you, one of the joys I found with my very first paycheck was to be able to buy my dad a proper suit, a complete suit, because he had never owned one in his life, buying my mom a complete outfit, a blanket. That was such a blessing. I remember bringing those things to my parents, and my mom, she started crying so badly, looking at me and starts praying for me, speaking words upon my life that, what, God, I thank you for my daughter. I thank, and it brought so much pleasure. And one thing before I end up, do you know what that made me so happy was to be able to go into a supermarket and push a trolley. There are some things that we take for granted in life, thinking that they are easy to come by. But for me, pushing a trolley full of grocery, buying for my family, then taking a cab, getting into my father's house, starting to offload that grocery, and us being able to eat proper meal was such a blessing for me. I am getting real with you guys. Why am I getting real? This is where I am coming from. There is a reason for this. There is a reason why I am bringing this story. Keep tuned on this channel. Why? Because I'm going to be bringing so much of my life so that you can see what life is all about, and knowing fully well that you are a success story, and whatever that is happening right now, it's just the beginning. So do you know what you need to do to be able to continue seeing this series up until it ends, to see how it unfolds, up to see where I am right now? You know what you need to do? Simply like my page, share it, like my page. So my YouTube channel is called Megs Hungwe. So share it.